Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I've got a great guest, one that many of you know and love, and I'm very glad that he's joining me today. Dave the Distributist, thank you so much, man.
Hello, how's it going?
Excellent, excellent. So, I wanted to talk about the goings on this week because we've had a pretty big fight over what conservative principles are, which is kind of funny because I don't think either of us at this point would describe ourselves as conservative. But yeah, I guess the broader question of what is the right wing and what does it stand for and what are these principles are. A lot of the mainstream right now is kind of hashing this out because, as many of Florida had this battle with Disney. Disney kind of decided to throw its hat in the arena and say, we are going to fight back against this act that protects those from grades pre-K through 3 from kind of gender indoctrination. You guys probably know this, unfortunately, by its mainstream media branding, the "Don't Say Gay" bill. It doesn't really matter that it doesn't say anything about that. Of course, that's what is stuck. And so when Disney threw its hat in the ring and said we're going to stand against this, we're going to kind of go full tilt and bring all of our influence to bear to try to get this overturned. The Florida legislature, led by Governor Ron DeSantis, said, "Yeah, that's not how this works. If you want to go ahead and try to overturn our laws, then we're certainly not going to allow you to keep operating under kind of special conditions." And they just recently pushed through kind of the removal of Disney's special protections that give it this Reedy Creek, basically municipal district, basically makes it's kind of its own Vatican City in the middle of the state of Florida. This has people on the left obviously up in arms defending giant corporations and why they shouldn't pay taxes, which is hilarious on its own, but we know hypocrisy doesn't really stop them. So not a whole lot there, but also it has the right in a big feud. A lot of the mainstream right saying, "Oh, we can't do this. This isn't our principles. We can't take vengeance on this." A lot of the National Review types, many people like that, really coming out against this move by DeSantis and saying this is kind of the end of conservative principles. Uh, Dave, interested in your thoughts here. Is this the right approach? Is this what we should expect from kind of the mainstream right? And do you think that kind of the up and coming right is going to gain traction here with this argument?
Well, like a lot of fights post at least 2019, it kind of has that sense of the cripple fight from South Park, where it's just these. That's very un-PC. I probably shouldn't have started out that way, but it's these incredibly weak entities fighting each other, and they both look like they would immediately crumble if either of the two sides showed any kind of fortitude or strength. The thing is that everyone's position in this makes absolute sense when you look at it from the perspective of power politics. It's just impossible to believe that anyone's acting on principle. The conservative case is particularly egregious because they're raging against a tax exemption being revoked, not simply cost of doing business taxes, but like literally an exemption that Disney got for lobbying them for really, and it's sort of a ridiculous. I don't see a principled actual motivation, even on libertarian basis, for Disney necessarily having this. And of course, the left has completely abandoned its principles, but we've known it's been doing that for ages. The issue, and I think this is the interesting thing, is that if people were to speak honestly, what they're actually saying isn't what they can't say this, but what the left wants to, if the left and the right were speaking honestly, the left wing would be saying, look, guys, we need Disney to stay on side to keep up the revolution. If they're being harassed by the government, they can't be a good revolutionary comrade. And so we have to make friends with them to keep our progressive movement going further to the left and getting all of you guys supported, because you all need us as revolution members. And the right would be saying, the National Review right would be saying, well, look, guys, we need to have corporations not being our enemies because they fund us. And if they stop funding us, we're not going to be able to actually have a chance at winning large-scale elections or financing any of our activism against the left. And then the DeSantis, right, would be saying something like, okay, we know that we're the weakest of all parties. We know we have no money. We know we have no support among the elites. But like, let's just take this tactical shot at Disney and hope that a larger movement consolidates around us that will support us. But the problem is that nobody, and again, like the left and the neocons are incredibly weak by historical standards, but no one in our age has the conceptual framework to imagine a permanent populist right victory that could consolidate power. And so, I have to say, I think you were talking to Yarvin about this a few days ago. The question is, what's ultimately the end game of this? It's harder to say for DeSantis, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the more interesting. Those last two cases are more interesting. We'll drill down some more on those because the first one, like you said, oh, the left is hypocritical. Shock, surprise. They flee their stated principles the minute that it's politically expedient. No surprise there. So we'll move on to the other two cases because I think those are far more interesting. For the National Review right that you're talking about, I think it's an excellent point that these people. It's amazing, and I've been particularly harping on one Trump former lawyer. She was part of the White House. So she's saying, "Oh, I'll go and defend Disney for free because this isn't who conservatives are, and we shouldn't be doing this." And so I'll go out there and do this. And it is truly amazing, like you're saying, that these people are willing to go to the mat. It's not that Disney is being punished; its right to speak is being stripped away. Any of those things. It's specifically just a repeal of a special carve out of government privilege for that one corporation.
Yeah,
So
like Warner Brothers doesn't get this.
Yeah, exactly. So you would think that even libertarian right wing people could kind of be on board with this. Not providing this concierge treatment for one corporation in the state and allowing them to kind of bully everyone else and have this advantage in what is supposed to be the free market, right? Well, why isn't this a free market discussion if anything? But it's amazing how many of these people. I think every one of these people has the same attack, and I saw this from Jeremy Boring, who is the one, I think, like the owner operator of Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's outlet, was basically like, well, my problem is not that I don't have a problem with battling Disney. I have a problem with the tone, right? There's a lot of tone policing in this. People are saying that you should punish your political enemies, and that's not okay. If we do this, we should do this for the right reasons. And I've made the case that I think it should be both, but that seems to be a lot of the objection. Now, I think they all know that that's kind of that's a lot of smoke and mirrors at the end of the day. But it is interesting that they're just they've manufactured this principle of you can never kind of send a message to your political enemies by simply like stripping away their privileges. Like that's how deeply ingrained this idea that you can never fight back is with the National Review right.
Well, we're kind of getting into the boundaries of liberalism here. If you broadly construed this in sort of a classically liberal sense, to the extent that the government bestows you privileges, they are general privileges under classical liberalism, and they should not be subject to politics because they are literally promises. And if you strip the promises away, the government's further promises matter less and less and less. So they're reacting to a certain state that I think potentially existed in the past, but it's not sort of a default realistic state for how politics operates, certainly not right now. And the conservatives, I don't know, part of me thinks that they're just totally cucking. Part of me thinks that they're staring at the same abyss that I am right now, and they just don't want to go over it. And it's probably too late. We probably are past the point of no return. The abyss we're facing down is that at the end of the day, every right is a privilege. And if the only operative principle is to punish enemies and to reward friends, then you're heading to some kind of unrestricted conflict. I'm trying to find a Susan-friendly word with this.
Yeah.
Some internal and unrestricted conflict where there's no boundaries to what can be done to the other side. in very, very short order. The example I always like to use, and this is pertinent to the question of Disney, is we now live in a country where introducing 8-year-olds to transgender ideology is considered child abuse by one side of the population, and not introducing transgender ideology to 8-year-olds is considered child abuse by the other side of the population. So no matter what side you're on, it's impossible to make any kind of peace under these conditions, under these assumptions. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, who are the people who are just genuinely clueless people who just want to go along to get along, and how many people are just looking at the situation and saying, this is going in a direction that I'm not comfortable with, because I respect the latter a lot more than the former.
Yeah, I think whether, no matter how much people deny and how comfortable they are with it, the kind of the edge of the Schmittian abyss is kind of staring back at everyone. We're quickly getting to the point where the kind of the obfuscation of liberalism is wearing away, and you can't pretend anymore. I did a tweet on this today about how, if you're still holding on to the marketplace of ideas fiction, explain to me kind of, how a polity that can't agree on what the words man and woman mean are going to come to a democratic resolution about anything. And it's getting harder and harder, I think, even for mainline conservatives to kind of pretend otherwise. But the interesting thing that then, I guess, since we kind of, if we know that the left is just, doing its hypocritical thing, and we know that the mainstream right is basically just denying the reality of what's coming because it's too unpleasant to kind of be honest about, then the last group we want to talk about is kind of this populist or new right. Actually, did you see the new right article on Yarvin and such?
Yeah, I just listened to it last night on Skeptical Ways. Everyone like, share, and subscribe. He's an audiobook channel for NRX. But yeah, I totally am on board with Yarvin's idea. The reason why people aren't hopping on the populist bandwagon quickly is because, I mean, it's not going to mince words. No one thinks they're going to win. It's just there's a reason why DeSantis is not having a ton of defectors over it. There's sort of two ways they're not going to win. The first way is that they don't right now have the numbers among people who could conceivably be elites. They might in the future, but moreover, among the elites that are sympathetic, that are sort of waiting for a plausible alternative to the current regime, there's no, like I said this before, there's no imagistic framework for what a victorious right populist or anti-cathedral victory looks like. So you're sticking your neck out, going all in. Because we live in a digital age, it's very hard to sort of slink back into the shadows once you come out and support something like this. And no one knows what the end state looks like. We can't imagine it without going back to the 30s or something like that.
Yeah, so the question I had for Yarvin, which unfortunately I didn't get to completely put to him because he kind of had to go on the stream that we were both on, but I'll put it to you to see what you think. The question I have is, I agree with Yarvin that we will not see a full populist victory. Like, I think that's especially at a national level. Like, I think that's pretty obvious. They don't have the institutional support. They don't have the numbers or the power amongst the elites or the people that matter to kind of make that turn happen. But is there a case to be made for what people like DeSantis are doing on a regional level? Is there a case for trying to keep this stuff out of the schools, or in your, or out of a children's program, that kind of thing, in your area, in your region, where your family and your community live? Even if these victories aren't national victories, is there anything to be said for, not just tactically, but just practically, like, your kids live in a state and you don't want them, like, obviously homeschooling or something like that is the best option, but realistically that's not the environment most people are going to be in. Is there anything to be said for fighting those battles, or does it just feed the beast either way?
I don't like the feed the beast model, but
Yeah.
I need to remind people that if you're going for local victories, then the sort of politics we're talking about of punishing friends and rewarding enemies, you're doing that like a way less than people who are fighting at the federal level. Because at the federal level and the level of federal statutes, your ability to reward friends and punish enemies is pretty much unlimited and international. And it's hooked up to the infinite money press called the Federal Reserve. At a state level, not only do you not have infinite money to reward friends, your enemies always can just go over your head. Like the lever's right there. And short of actual rebellion, technically on paper, they can go to a higher authority and rain down judgment. Or if not that, they can get a job as a defector. So that game of we were talking about earlier, the Schmittian politics game, it's just not the same thing at the state level. Now, I guess the idea is state politics is a stopgap. Like you're getting something for your group so that they can thrive, so that as the federal government gets weaker and less able to enforce its will, which it is, then you'll be able to have a stronger community going forward. I think that there is a case to be made for that, but I think that the problem is that there's just so much groundwork that hasn't been done yet. I think that's what Yarvin was trying to get at with his most recent article. Is like it's just hard to even imagine like what the end point of that is. I don't know. I mean, this is kind of getting into my own personal stuff here, but there was some very upsetting news from Rod Dreher, the author of the Benedict option, that I think somewhat compromises his witness in this dimension. But a lot of people who've been talking about this separate community type deal, our results are a little spotty. They're not exactly models that you can easily replicate. I understand people are still experimenting. I understand that people have had success stories here and there, but I don't think it's at the point where this is a successful political formula. And insofar as local victories go, and by local, I mean anything that's not at the level of the Federal Reserve, like the biggest thing is trying to get some kind of successful political formula together that operates with just the state government, which I don't think anyone's really discovered yet. I think it's going to basically come into existence if things get worse and worse and worse, but we haven't seen that yet, I guess.
I don't know a lot about the Rod Dreher thing, and I don't want to do like a bunch of drama or anything, but can you bring me up to date with that? Because all I heard was like he said something people didn't like, but I know nothing about it.
It's just a divorce. It's not anything that's earth shattering.
Okay.
But it's a divorce it's a divorce on top of basically a career that's endlessly been talking about personal steps that you can take to like beat modernity or something like that. It just contradicts the narrative in an insane way. And it created this opportunity where all Rod Dreher's critics had just been dunking on him, and there's nothing that his friends can say really in his defense. It's just it optically looks messy, I should say that, right?
Gotcha.
And I want to personalize this. Obviously, people have their own lives, and we all have fallen natures, and we all have things we've done. But the problem is that when you stand up and go like, oh, personal virtue, personal virtue, personal virtue, personal virtue, and then something happens where it can't be explained without a moral fault, then this becomes I would say this becomes a large problem. And this is a problem that evangelical Christianity has dealt with. You had people like, what is that? Ravi Zacharias, I think was his name.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Lots of things like this. And, it's the thing is that Christianity has to deal with the fact that leaders fall and they have setbacks in their own personal lives. And I don't think that should really defeat them as a leader. But the leadership has to be maintained with something more than simply constantly sending people. If your message is constantly to everyone else to just go back and reform your personal life, then these types of setbacks are harder to integrate into some kind of story about what your broader message is. And the Benedict option was not Rod Dreher proposing a political, he wrote a book called The Benedict Option,
Right.
which was about how we were all going to basically just retreat into our own families and make sure that our families and our communities were just really, really good. And that would create some kind of solution to modernity, consuming everything. That was a little less clear. This doesn't work. This has to be backed up with something that's more substantive in terms of what people can do.
Yeah, there's a consistent problem with this. It's the Jordan Peterson issue, right? Like, you just better yourself, clean up your room, pull things together. It's good personal advice, but if you're proposing it as an overall solution for what ails the world, then if you can't even protect your own kind of family, then like you said, we're all fallen, we all make mistakes. That's a obvious thing, but if you're going to hold that up as the model and then it can't even work in your life, then
yeah, I
it's
think
hard.
I mean, Peterson caught this too with his own troubles. And
right.
I actually thought that his troubles were much more understandable, because I think something like that could happen to anyone. It wasn't like a continuous failure.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you become a moralizer and a political figure at the same time, then your moral life has a political dimension to it. And I think Jordan Peterson, I mean, he really needed to have some broader political idea to fall back on. And so did Dreher. And what we're left with is modernity sucks, clean your room, and then no broader perspective on what a political formula like this would actually look like. And if you do that, people are going to be wondering when scandals like this erupt periodically.
So this is what I brought up to Yarvin, and this is my problem. I largely agree with this understanding, but I have a hard time seeing any way forward from it, which I think is then a failure of the understanding, because if the idea is that we need a way to kind of get this, we need to have a solution in mind, a place where this is going, a place where we can resolve this. And a large amount of like what I hear from Yarvin and many is like, well, once everything kind of falls apart, then the people who have their stuff together, that people will look to them. And then leadership opportunities emerge. So kind of become worthy, clean up your room, create your community, whatever version of this you would like. This always kind of seems to be the way to go. But then the answer of like, but you also can't build anything or fight any battles even regionally, because they're kind of doomed to fail. And again, I can't really refute the logic of like the overall problem there. But it seems like, then how do you actually build a counter elite? Like, how do you actually build a community? Like, how do you actually ever create a network that allows you to envision a larger project? This is something Malcolm Kuhns brought up to me when I was on stream, and Malcolm and I disagree on a lot of things, but I think this might be the best thing he ever said. Is like, when these things happen, you always wish you had like 1,000 more years to plan and prepare. And if your guys aren't practiced in the art of leadership, they don't learn on the spot. Like, they don't just like you don't just magically figure it out because now it's go time. And so without kind of that practical experience, how do you actually like move into positions of leadership and provide alternatives?
Well, I don't know if we do at this moment, to be quite honest. I mean, I don't understand how this is supposed to work. Right now, what we're understanding is that the last 2 years have been devastating for the right, because, I mean, it's hit. I mean, the thing is that the two things that have happened, sort of COVID and this out of control hyperinflation and the crime wave, what this does is it devastates in real life communities, which is always where the right has had its strength. It disconnects them, and it forces them to communicate through social media for 2 years, which basically ices them and ices their ability to create new generations of themselves. And then, first of all, there's online censorship, a crime wave, which causes basically a colonization from the inner cities to the hinterlands. And then the inflation, this is something that I think everyone's felt, and I don't know what really the answer is to this, but inflation hurts right-wing content creators way more than it hurts left-wing content creators, because right-wing content creators are from the middle class, and they produce for the middle class. The middle class is obviously the people who are hurt worst by inflation. So if you're someone like me or American Krogan, who's someone who brought this up recently, and I don't really rely on donations, but if you put a lot of work into this and you're relying on donations to make you whole again, that's not going to happen, because people are tightening their belts and your audience is the middle class. Furthermore, since you're a middle class, you're looking to like start a family and have kids. Whereas you look at the left, I mean, ContraPoints, I know I talk about the left all the time, but I need it for comparison just to put things in perspective. They made 0 videos this year, 1, maybe 2 videos last year. They're making in $1 million. And their last tweet was complaining about how much they got taxed after not making a single video for 11 months almost. Or is it like, or maybe it's more like 8 or 10, but for a very long time. And I mean, this is the perspective. ContraPoints funders aren't feeling this. That the 2 people that contribute to people like ContraPoints are people who are very rich, who are professional leftists. So they're basically, this is a professional expense because they get their money for being leftist activists in a university or an NGO setting. Or it's deep pockets, or it's people who are they're basically young or perennially living the lifestyle of a young person, where they're carrying around massive debt that they never possibly can pay back, so they don't. And almost 100% of their income is disposable, and so they blow it on whatever entertainment product they can, because they'll never accumulate wealth. So why even try paying back the debt, especially now that the currency the debt's in is inflating? And the leftist business model works a lot better than the right wing one. So the right wing has a funding problem as well.
No, I mean that's absolutely true. I don't know. Like I said, I'm trying to imagine. I guess it seems like, as always, the solution is just kind of wait and see and wait till kind of things come off the rails, which is something that Yarvin's caught a lot of flack for, in the past. But I don't know. Like I said, it feels like it's difficult for that transition to ever occur if no one ever goes through the experience of, I guess, sharpening their iron in some arena. But
so, I mean, this is the one disadvantage of the left, is that increasingly few people actually believe it.
Mm-hmm.
This is good for them in the short term because it allows them to do things like side with Disney and do all sorts of shitty stuff. But increasingly few people are actually genuine believers. And I think that there are very many right-wing true believers. And we're going to have to go through the eye of the needle, where the only people doing this are doing this because they really believe it. And somewhere in this process, we'll have to find deep money or deep pockets that can provide the money to build something that's more than just individual projects. I think that's the real question at this stage. I think things like Substack help. I think that the Twitter disruption, whatever the outcome with Musk is, I think that will help. I think Yarvin's right about that as well. Is that even if Twitter destroys itself or weakens its own product to keep Musk out, that's a win. If he takes it over and he makes it less conducive to just being a left-wing echo chamber, that's a win. If he takes it over and a lot of left-wing journalists leave and create their own site, that's also a win. All of these things are wins in this dimension. And that's the kind of thing that I think we can build on. I mean, I don't know. I mean, from your perspective, I don't want to throw this back at the host, which is always bad form.
Yeah,
but I kind of want to, right? Because, So this DeSantis thing, like, it's encouraging. I love it. I like the fact that he's doing it. And I really think it's a popcorn moment. Oh man, I'm here for it 100%. But then I kind of do the whole Yarvin thing, and I ask myself, well, how does this victory make future victories more probable? And that is sort of where I come up blank on this DeSantis thing. It seems I can see how this feeds into a DeSantis presidential campaign.
Mm-hmm.
But a DeSantis presidential campaign, at least how the culture war is situated currently, is, I mean, it might be the one thing. The problem is every time that one of these little populist eruptions happens, it's like this huge distraction for people of my class, where they can pretend like they're not living through a rapidly declining society. And, people like Adam and Sitch can pretend that, oh, wow, if only DeSantis left office, then all this woke stuff would be reformed away. That's the narrative that people like my parents tell themselves, people in my hometown tell themselves for 4 years. And they don't change their worldview because of that. And so, the trajectory of the DeSantis political ascendancy, it doesn't get me what I want, which is an intellectual class that is flagging from leftism. And so, to ask the Yarvin question, like, what is the victory that this makes more possible, I guess?
Yeah, so I guess the worry here, I mean, the problem is that the victories it makes possible are stopgaps.
Yeah.
And so I do think there are concrete victories that it makes possible. You send a message that corporations trying to dictate, this kind of stuff can have consequences. They don't have carte blanche. You do get a minor victory in the fact that, at some level kids can't receive this stuff, though obviously there are a million ways around that, and many teachers will find their ways around that.
Yeah, I coming from California, this is just my experience. I lived through the 90s in California. I lived through 1,000 of these legislative top-down attempts to rein in the progressive bureaucracy. They almost never work.
Yeah.
Berkeley's been commanded to not use racial preferences for 25 years now. Like, I don't know if you've seen their emission policies of UC California this year. Do they look like they're not using racial preferences?
Right. No, and I've made that case as well. Sorry. But I think, like I said, I think that most of the victories that it does win you, kind of the halts, the stop and think stuff for the left, it's only half measures. Though I guess at that point, then you're just committing to acceleration, right? It's just like, well, if things don't get bad enough, then people won't learn. And I know that's true, but it also feels gross, I guess. I don't know. It's maybe that's it. Maybe it's purely emotional reaction. I can't refute the logic of it, but it's also difficult to make peace with the idea that sitting around and watching it burn is the correct play.
The correct play is not to watch it burn. The correct play is to refocus people in what they believe. I mean, even if so, I mean, the thing is, and this is what I've discovered works very well for progressives. I think you come from a red community. I don't want to make presumptions about you, but I come from a deep blue one, right? Mm-hmm. I don't come from Berkeley, but I say I come from Berkeley because I come from a town that's not far from there and has roughly the same politics. And so the thing is that once the question you always want to ask people, this is the question that got me in trouble with Adam and Sitch, surprisingly, but you always want to go back to what do they actually believe about the future and what do they actually value. So much of the progressive worldview, at least among the boomers and the Xers, is based on this idea that everything is just constantly improving. If not for those wascally Republicans, then we've on this upward trajectory. The most effective sort of red pilling tool I've had for people in this intellectual class is just to point out the fact that we're definitively in decline. Once they acknowledge that, and then you follow it up with questions about belief and what they want to see for the future, you get to immediately an area of politics that feels much more productive. They'll openly admit to thought crime at that stage, and this has been sort of the way I've been thinking about this. I don't know, Art. I don't know if there's any way that Red America is going to be able to get out from under the thumb of the federal government without a lot more allies in formerly blue America. I know it's really depressing to say because I consider my own side of America to be like the biggest piece of shit ever. I think that they're ideologically clueless. I think they're egotists and collective narcissists. And I think they, in many ways, destroyed America. But at the same time, I don't see how without more allies from those communities, things are going to move forward, I guess. And so in many ways, we either have to manufacture a rebellion in more, and it's happening slowly. You can see people peel off, but it needs to be going a lot faster. Or at least I like it to go a lot faster, because I'd like to think that we'd be in a better shape by the time my son reaches my age, right?
So I want to put a pin in this right here because I want to hit on a point you just hit there, because it's also gonna work into kind of the next topic I want to talk to. So let's hold that right there. That idea of needing more people, more allies in blue areas and in those positions, because I want to talk more about in a second. But let's run through a few super chats here so we don't these don't become off topic and stuck here. Pete Budapest for 999. Thank you very much, sir, for your donation. Have you heard the Kevin McCarthy recordings? Perfectly shows the rights MO. Step 1, surrender. Step 2, let me talk to my enemies and see if I can get small carve out from them. Pathetic. Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example of
was Kevin McCarthy the guy that said, if your town is dying because of globalization, just move away?
I'm not sure, but it sounds perfectly written. It sounds perfectly like something he would say.
He was like an NRO guy that was like this bald, like overweight guy that was this libertarian.
Yeah,
like a Reason Magazine type dude.
I don't know, but again, that sounds right. I don't know Kevin McCarthy that well. Isn't he the Republican speaker, or the?
Oh, hold on, let me check.
Isn't he or would be the leader? Oh, lost the Distributist, but there he is.
Sorry about that. I accidentally hit refresh.
That fact check was so powerful it knocked you out of the stream.
Yeah.
But I believe McCarthy is.
He's a minority leader. I'm thinking
he's minority leader.
McCarthy is the National Review guy. Is it Andrew McCarthy?
Yeah. I think you confused the two. But yeah, no. I mean, Kevin McCarthy has been very clearly, he's milquetoast. He's Paul Ryan but weaker somehow. So I don't. He's pretty much exactly what you'd expect them to have there. Line Drinker for 19.99. Mint juleps on Sunday. Have a 20. Thank you very much, sir. Mint juleps are, of course, the drinks of Southern gentlemen. If you don't know how to make a good mint julep, then that's something that you need to fix. It's very embarrassing. Make sure you know how to make a good mint julep. Let's see.
It's Kevin Williamson. That's the guy from National Review.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've seen pretty much every guy at National Review line up one after the other to fall in front of Disney on this one. There is one, I think, though, that didn't. And he's a Claremont fellow, so I guess that makes sense.
There's definitely a division. I don't think the National Review has any future, really. It's just.
Oh no, yeah.
I mean, it's just I don't know actually who reads it anymore.
No, I treat it like David French.
It's not quite as bad, but it just doesn't have a future. There's no vision of America that it can preserve anymore. That isn't an absolute betrayal of what it originally believed 20 years ago.
Yeah, when I had Mark Hemingway on, I was like, are you not allowed to have ever read Burnham? Do they pretend he never existed at National Review? What happens? Like, is it banned?
Well, I think that Burnham was fun if he was a kooky thinker. That maybe in the abstract, maybe in the state of nature, this is how politics works. Just the same way that an object put into motion stays in motion in the depths of space. That doesn't apply to us here in liberal democracy, where we have this tradition that insulates us from that political reality. But
Well,
once
and I
Burnham became real, and he really became real when woke capital became real, then I think that basically to signal the end of their business model.
Yeah, well, I think they also liked him more for his foreign policy than
Probably.
the rest. Yeah. Let's see. UTIS 4321. Thank you for your donation. When the left started going after people's livelihoods for their politics, the right could only surrender or play the game as the left does. And well, that's the thing, right? Is yes, like this is the kind of the Schmittian friend enemy. The problem is that the right cannot cancel people the way the left can.
Yeah. It's not that we wouldn't. I mean, it's not that we wouldn't want to. This is another thing too that we have to be careful about. That people might get an impression from the live stream title. There's no way that you can will yourself into the position of power through pure will. We can't just decide that we want to win tomorrow and win, because there's no legal framework for which somebody can be removed for their job for being a trans activist. I've never seen that in my entire life.
Well, there's been a few, actually. There's been a few people exposed by libs of TikTok who have lost their jobs.
Okay, fair enough. But
the scale is nothing.
Yeah.
We're picking off stragglers. They can shoot a general at any time, and so
exactly.
it's just asymmetrical. It's never that game never rolls in your favor. Now that doesn't mean that you do what I think the mainstream right is doing, which is just saying, oh well, then you just pretend like that principle is that you never cancel anyone because. And then just keep letting the left cancel every right winger, and we do nothing. But just understanding you're never going to do the same level of damage that they are to the political movement through that threat. You simply don't have the institutional power to do it.
Yeah, and the thing is that again, there's sort of the two varieties of people who point this out. The first people are people staring into the abyss, and the other people are delusional, right? And it's always hard to tell which one you're talking to.
So, Matty Ice, excellent name. Thank you for your donation. Yarvin is a smart cookie, but the most radical thing you can do is nothing with a monk-like focus is silly. People are waking up to what's going on. More action like Florida seems productive. And yeah, that's kind of my impulse. The clear pill has always been the hardest part of Yarvin's philosophy to swallow, but both Yarvin and Dave make very valid points about the end game. I'm still skeptical that there's no value in having some practice and organization and those kind of things, but I don't know that just more of what's going on in Florida by itself is enough, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like a good test case for this would be like the Canadian trucker protest, which is something that my in-laws are Canadian, and so we hear a lot about this. But I don't know who. Like, ultimately, I knew it was going to fail. My in-laws thought it would succeed, which I'm like, come on, And of course, this is always the role you play: is that the Stephen Harper is basically the Republican side of Canadian politics. They always think that these systems work, and from our side, we know that they don't. And so, but I was sort of convinced into getting excited about the truckers' protest because I thought it would be a delegitimizing feature for the Trudeau administration. And the problem is I don't, we're like, 3 months out from it now? And, I'm just being realistic here. It probably brought a few people over, but I can't really think of anybody that reacted to that wasn't already against Trudeau.
Yeah, the Canadian trucker strike should be a pretty big black pill for people looking for kind of that organized protest action solution on a lot of levels, because these guys had like real material damage they could do to the system, but also in like an optically peaceful way. Like it was pretty much like the perfect storm. Like they had their hands on their thumbs on like a specific artery of the economy. They had the means to do it. They had the ability to do it without doing any kind of like, anything that's, Fed posty. Like they were able to do it all peacefully, and they were able to like garner like large populist support like from outside the country and that kind of thing. And then nothing happened, and they all got arrested if they didn't walk away.
Well, I mean, we should praise them in the fact that a lot of people thought that the Canadian trucker protests would be like a Charlottesville, where not only would the cathedral walk away with unscathed from the interaction, but it would walk away with new invigoration to crack down on right-wing causes. And they certainly didn't get that. So I guess on the sense that, in the sense that it demonstrated that the cathedral is getting worse at this, there's something to be said for the Canadian trucker protests. But the thing is, just on net, I don't see how the right really got anything from that. It probably made a few Canadian conservatives or a few Canadian moderate leftists think twice about Trudeau. It had, people who were into internet privacy shaking their heads. And then everyone else in America at least bought the government line, and life went on. And, and Trudeau just seems to be he doesn't seem to have suffered from that at all.
Life of Brian. I'm not going to display your comment just out of an abundance of caution. Thank you for your donation. I will say that the build things option you're presenting there is the correct one. But like I said, just gonna, out of abundance of caution, not put that one up there. Let's see. Rashad Abdul Salam. The left is on the back foot. Time to attack on full cylinders. Trump DeSantis 2024. Next year should be gropers crashing dim halls, that kind of thing. I mean, I appreciate your spirit. But
yeah, I mean, this is like, you're going to have gropers like break into like a Berkeley Democratic town hall and then ask them questions about women, and they're going to get entertained in this. I don't know. I know people think that this should work, but it doesn't, right? This doesn't. Even the people who complain about this don't move off of their moderate positions.
Also, even if you are on board with like the democracy solution here, Trump and DeSantis on one ticket, I think, is a huge mistake, because that basically it's wasting your powder. Like if it did, like Trump has already proven he's not going to kind of turn things around, but he is going to run. And so the best thing DeSantis can do is just stay out of his way, keep being a good governor, provide that model, and then run once Trump is out of the way. If you really think that this solves problems, I don't think it does. But if you do, I think even if you're going with that tactic, I think that's not the right way to set that up. And I've lost Dave again. Says his devices are not connected. Oh, there he goes. Nope, it's a lie. All right, well, I'll keep working my way through these super chats until he has returned. Oh, now he has returned.
Sorry about that. I keep on this page keeps on flickering for me.
Okay.
Yeah, the thing is with like DeSantis could try to pull a victory, like you were saying, by like if he can keep Florida economically afloat and still stick his thumb in the eye of the cathedral, that might be a model. It's not enough, in my opinion, but it's better than crashing into the presidency again, like we did with Trump. I really don't know what that exercise got anybody.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I mean, I will say that, well, I do understand the value of Trump. He made it very clear to a large amount of people that like the system doesn't work. I think there was a value in that. But policy wise, there were no gains made. Or nothing significant that didn't vanish the minute he was out of the White House, and that's what matters, right? It's not just where you're there.
The thing is that I feel that a lot of people who complain about wokeness in the present system, they don't seem to realize that the problem is in very foundational things. Like, unless you're at the level where you're literally attacking civil rights laws and the university system and the system of unelected bureaucrats that we have, unless we're openly talking about that, I'm not so sure what progress we're going to be making.
Nope, I definitely agree, and I don't think Trump is serious enough to force that conversation or surround himself with people who will do so. Let's see. Pete Budapest again. Thank you for your donation, sir. We know we don't have a shot at power without substantial elite defection. So, what's our game plan for at least protecting ourselves until then? Yeah, that's the huge question, right, Pete?
This is like the Red America, Blue America strategy. The Red America strategy is a defense game. The Blue America strategy has to be an offense game. The thing is, I think that I particularly am concerned about the offense against the blue stranglehold on thought leaders of any kind.
Well, let's stop and go ahead and talk about that then. We'll get the rest of these super chats because I wanted to get to that, and the super chats are stacking up more than I thought. So I'll just let them. We'll get. Don't worry, guys. We'll get to those. But let's go ahead and talk about that real because I wanted to address that. So, you were saying we need to get more people in positions of power in the elites kind of in these blue areas on board to kind of solve this problem.
How do you get more excited young people?
Sure.
And then how do you get excited young anti-progressive people? And then how do you get older boomers to mentor them and encourage them in that attitude?
So I've been working my way through Sam Francis's Leviathan and His Enemies. And one of the things that struck me is it's a point he's made, but something that Christopher Lasch made and Alistair MacIntyre made, and a lot of people kind of made this point without necessarily realizing they were overlapping on it. But the kind of the massification of society, these larger technocratic structures that are now, the managerial regime that's kind of in charge of the United States and its empire. One of the key aspects of generating that class and its control is hedonism, is melting down kind of the moral structures. The Francis refers to them as the bourgeoisie moral structures of individual families and communities and that kind of thing, religious communities, and that's what allows the managerial class to acquire its power and then drive the society. If that's true, if kind of the degradation of traditional morality is essential to the formation of the managerial state, is there a way that you can even commandeer or sway the managerial class to your side? Like, is that an option? Is there a way to just kind of get rid of the wokeness and then turn the managers your direction? And if not, then how does the securing the blue strategy or, kind of being able to fight them at that level work?
Well, I mean, this is like young people like debauchery. I mean, I don't know. I think that this obviously is a question about pushing the cart downhill versus pushing it up. I personally don't trust any. This is the thing, is that in order to be properly right wing, you have to understand what's wrong with LGBTQ+. And if you don't, like, even if you are one of those, even if you have those proclivities, if you don't understand fundamentally what's wrong with the politicized expression of that, then I think you've missed something very, very large. There's something that Richard Hanania said, and he said that it seems that human families have some natural homophobia to themselves that will just spring back up the second that it's not suppressed by activism. And I think that's the case with human beings generally, is that we understand that political homosexuality or political sexuality of any kind, because, as I said many times before, there cannot be sexual liberty, period. The concept of sexual liberty has to die. This is something that's deeply unnatural to people, and so we naturally rebel against expressions of politicized sexuality. And young people do it a lot less. So I'm not alone in understanding right now that there's an incredible tiredness coming from this sexuality thing. You see the emergence of sex negative feminism or sex negativity among the Zoomers and the alphas. And that is an interesting development, I should say. But I think we've only seen the beginning of this. Obviously, you're not going to get more people who want to have some kind of mature, chaste view of human sexuality than the free-for-all Lady Gaga, we're born this way, live out loud, sort of gay pride attitude. The gay pride attitude will always be easier. It'll always attract more people. But this isn't a game of more people. It's a game of better people. And as this becomes more cliche, anybody who actually wants to have an authentic expression of life that has some kind of permanence to it is going to be looking for something different. And a lot of them are finding these modes of existence that, while not traditional, are sort of definitively anti this anything goes debauchery that was described in, what was it, Sam Francis's book?
Yeah. I guess my question is systemic, though, because like I said, multiple authors explaining kind of this similar phenomenon, that you kind of need to homogenize people into this hedonism for kind of managerialism to work. And so I guess
I'm
this
not
is
so familiar with the mechanism for that. Like, can we elucidate that connection a little bit?
Sure.
Obviously, if you're recruiting managers, you're recruiting young people, and young people are easy to recruit with the offer of easy sex early in their lives. So you can get early loyalty that way. But I don't. So I see why there's a utility there, but I don't see that the necessary part. That's not clicking for me right away.
Sure. So I think the way that he is explaining it is that in order to manage a vast number of people in kind of the micromanaging way that the technocracy does, it needs a gray goo, right? It needs a very standardized widget, and particular moral particularity is its enemy, right? Like it doesn't function if every community has like its own distinct moral standards and imperatives that it requires the kind of mass state to work around. And so it needs to like shave the rough edges off of these regional understandings of morality and these local kind of this local autonomy of moral structures, so that it can kind of manage the most basic form of human being. And so this is why it drives people towards this hedonism, because that is like the most malleable form which it can then kind of ply them into what it needs to manage a large number of people, if that makes more sense.
But even this is sort of showing its age a little bit, right? Because you can tell, is this Sam Francis? You can tell that he believes that the left is more or less equivalent to global homogenization. But what you see in sort of the post-2012 left is the reemergence of particularism and moralism in a way that disrupts, and I mean, it's totally perverse and it's totally anti-human. But there are forms of cancel culture too, right? Cancel culture is a form of moralism. I don't know if it was Zero H.P. Lovecraft who said this, but he, in a perfectly homogenized managerial state, cancel culture doesn't exist. Like, as long as you meet your performance metrics,
right,
you're good. Like, your off hours are your off hours. It doesn't matter, right? The machine doesn't care.
Yeah, he was talking about this. Yeah.
So the thing is that we're not sliding into the Francis Fukuyama world. We're not sliding into the Klaus Schwab world, really. But basically the Klaus Schwab is sort of under a 90s illusion a little bit. Like, if nothing else, it's almost less horrifying that it's encountering this problem. But what we're seeing is a disruption of this path. People are trying to introduce disruptive moralities, even from the left. And so the question is just, the questions become less how do we deconstruct all morality than which morality will rule. And these sort of managers have shown no backbone at opposing the woke Puritans and sort of in their sort of non-homogeneic moralization. So I'm not convinced that this is an impossibility, I should say.
I guess I see it slightly differently. I mean, you're right that it's a reassertion of a particular moral structure, but I think it's the one that emerges after you've smoothed out all the other ones, if that makes sense. Like once you've kind of dissolved it's kind of the bastardized religion that emerges after you've kind of mowed down all the other ones more than it is like a its own because Francis's whole point is that it's the regionalization, it's the specificity of the moral understanding that's the problem, right? Like the problem is not that a morality exists. The problem is that like 50 moralities exist for different regions and understandings and communities, and the system simply can't manage and process that many moralities. So I don't think he would. I mean, we're all speculating here, but I don't think he would say that like it doesn't, that morality wouldn't be generated by that outcome. I think hedonism can be unhelpful there. It kind of throws us a red herring. I think it's more that the morality that emerge would be formless and shapeless to any particular community, and would just be applied to everyone who's being managed, so they could be managed under that one particular morality more easily, if that makes sense.
You see, I think that we're just running up against human nature.
Sure,
I feel like I understand what global techno capital wants, and I understand what the leftist activists want, and they're not the same thing. And so the question is that what corporate America is trying to procure is some kind of weird marriage between optimal efficiency, corporate juicing of the human soul, and then this leftist desire for an impossible dream of universal human equality. There are some similarities between these visions, but they're fundamentally opposed to each other. So both sides have to accomplish the compromise with copious amounts of lying. And the question is, well, is this Nick Land? Is who's fooling themselves ultimately? Who is getting raked over the coals? Is the true vision Klaus Schwab's, and we're just on our way to complete meltdown of all human distinctiveness whatsoever in the face of this capital engine, or is the capital engine slowly degrading, slowly broken, and it's showing its age, making these concessions to leftists that they never make to other ethnic communities as a mechanism of cope? I consider the latter possibility to be a very distinct possibility.
No, for sure. And so I guess then you think that's this conflict then, because it's kind of anti-human and running up against human nature. This is where then you'll see more opportunities to recruit young people out of those those classes that previously would have been captured by kind of managerialism and leftism.
Yeah, I think so. That's my hope, at least. I mean, well, the problem is I think we've taken a very broad view, so I'm not exactly so sure where to focus, right?
No, it's okay. You don't have to give a particular.
No, I mean, my understanding is that the Klaus Schwab vision is choking to death on political realities that it can't control, and so that is going to start dying away when people, like just with the supply chain disruptions, that's not part of the plan. I know there's, and I'm not completely immune to this, I know there's sort of like this conspiracy theory that this is all manufactured and the pods are coming as a solution to all this. But I think that this crisis is genuine. I think that their systems are falling apart. And I think what's going to happen is I think that religions of cope are going to come and fill the gaps. And one of these religions, the first one on the scene, is wokeism, because it slides right into the corporate HR framework very, very easily. But the problem is that the woke religions are very weak weak religion. It appeals to weak people. It doesn't replace itself, and it's highly questionable whether it will be able to survive in any kind of mode of hostility. The second it has any kind of institutional pushback, it might just collapse in on itself. And then the question is, okay, well, what comes after that, right? Will the more traditionalist religions that have been pushed into the corner, will they come back? They seem like there's like, other than sort of the legal barriers, there's nothing stopping them. But we have yet to see what's really possible there, outside of a few heretical people here and there.
Yeah, always puts my mind to Oswald Spengler and his prediction of second religiousness out of communities. Though I hope he's wrong about how that ends.
Well, like the ghost dance, I mean.
Well, he says that basically, like, your religion dies as you enter the civilizational phase, and you become, entirely, when you're in the city phase, the civilizational phase, you lose your metaphysical impetus, and everything is continues on kind of the momentum of science and structure. But that means, like, basically the life force is dead, and everybody tends toward atheism and that kind of thing. And then once the atheism kind of people kind of lose their, but actually he interestingly very much predicts, like, people walking away from modern science, basically, and then after they do that, they lapse into a second religiousness, but it's like a hollow echo of the religion. It's never a rebirth of the religion.
Yeah, like Julian the Apostate or ghost dancing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
First of all, I think, I don't think that our civilization is going to have a Caesarean phase. It's just not. I think that this whole idea that you would abolish the religion and the Brahmin class and rule just as like military apparatus, that's fundamentally odious to Faustian man, or to the man and woman of Christendom. The men and women of Christendom will only fight when they believe that the king has a religion that they actually believe in. They will not fight for a dead god or for just stability for stability's sake. This isn't China. This isn't the Flavian emperors. There's going to have to be a living religion. So I think we're much likely just going to see flat up decline. Maybe the invention of a new religion, maybe the recombination of a lot of old religions, but I am not expecting a Caesarism. And I don't doubt that there's going to be a lot of hollow second religiosity, but I'm kind of wondering if that's not a natural process of religious rediscovery. Like a lot of the second religiosity of the dying Roman Empire was Christian. Like, read Boethius, right? Was that the second religiosity of the dying Roman Empire? You see a lot of it there, right?
No, yeah, interesting. I'm not sure. I'm sure if a Caesar phase come, it would look much different. I think a lot about the Faustian civilization alters Oswald's or Spengler's assumptions.
I don't see how, like, what the West wants is something to believe in, and I don't think a Caesar can provide that. He by definition doesn't, right? Yeah. The Caesar just promises stability.
No, that's definitely true. All right. Well, I think we've gotten far enough into the weeds on that one. So okay, let's go back to our super chats. Sam 153, thank you for your donation. Cheers for the chill stream. How worthless will the 2022 GOP midterm win be? As worthless as you can imagine would be, I think, an easy answer for both of us. But I don't know. Do you have any other opinions on that? Because I can't imagine it being of any value.
It would be worth something if the Democrats win.
Yeah. I mean,
like that would, if you're talking about, like, that would might red pill a lot more people than the trucker protest did. We'll say that.
Yeah. I don't see them going to the mat to pull that off. I think they'll just let the natural wave come in, and then let the Republicans take credit for the crash of civilization they're in the middle of.
It sounds like that would be the if they were intelligent, they wouldn't fortify this election. They would they would simply, because they need to have a patsy anyway, and things are not going in a very good direction right now at all. and there's no Republican to take the blame for it.
Yeah, I think Trump was a very special case. I don't think you'll see that those tricks played this time, and doing it across many different elections simultaneously is far more difficult for a multitude of reasons. So let's see. Oh, yeah. Would you and Dave be interested in doing a stream with Michael Knowles? He's been signaling a lot of reactionary ideas, even quoted you. Did he really quote me? I've not heard that at all. If anybody knows where that is, I'd be interested in hearing that. But yeah, I mean, I think we'd both be interested if anybody knows Michael Knowles, put something together, let us know, I guess. Let's see, where's the next one here? Pete Budapest, again, thank you again, sir. Civil disobedience works, MLK Jr., except when it doesn't. Wise up, right wingers. Yeah, I mean, I think it's been very clear, and Yarvin made this case way back in original UR, and I don't think anything has changed about that. You need to be very clear that those things only work when the government's already on your side, or I shouldn't say maybe the government, but when the ruling class is already on your side, when you're already ascendant.
You have to have like a very energetic piece of the ruling class on your side for that to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. If so, Sebastian Service, thank you. If so under fire, why not make kayfabe low-key political content? Politics would just be the background assumption as to the effective penetrating the zeitgeist through entertainment, creating context through recreation. I mean, I agree that you certainly need. I think that culture at this point is probably more effective than political content, right? If that's kind of where this is going.
What does he mean, political kayfabe? Like,
well, kayfabe's the wrestling term. Where
I know that, but
yeah.
Does he mean like blood sports, like internet blood sports?
I'm not exactly sure. That was my confusion there. I was kind of cutting to the second part because I wasn't sure exactly where that was going to.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking like J-Reg or something. Or the problem is that this is. Did you happen? I didn't actually see this, but I heard people talking about this. Did you see the whole Mr. Medicare versus Nick Fuentes debate? You've heard about it, I'm sure. Right?
I heard it was going on, but I knew absolutely nothing. I didn't even know who Fuentes was debating. I just heard people like saying something about the Fuentes debate. That's all I know.
Yeah, so it looks like internet blood sports is coming back. But the reaction most people had to this is just that it's like Medicare and Nick Fuentes just trying to convince the audience that they care the least about everything. They're like unflappable, that you can't get to them because that's what optically looks good in these sort of blood sport type deals. But this is the exact opposite type of emotion. We want to get people to think about what they really value. And the sort of irony, the most disastrous, poisonous development in American politics has been the political comedy show, where basically, politics is serious. I mean, I think people should laugh every now and again. That's great. But politics is serious stuff. And if you're laughing and you're not really aware of what's going on, I mean, people will convince you to trade your heritage for a bowl of porridge. And you'll think it's super funny, and you're going to laugh at the screen. And then you're going to wake up in a country and, your children will have nothing. And, you'll realize then that the joke you were laughing at was you. And so I just don't trust this mode of entertainment because I think it prioritizes the exact worst emotions in people in a lot of ways. Not that I wouldn't like it if I knew for a fact that it was done with the right motivations. It's just that I always feel that the entertainment product approach to political questions prioritizes the worst possible actors.
Yeah, I don't see its value. I don't understand. I don't enjoy it, and I don't understand how it's valuable for kind of the cause or people in general. I agree that like irony is just poison, and I think people are desperate for sincerity, and that doesn't mean you have to be on the nose all the time. Like I think one of the most powerful things about kind of the meme magic, is that it's funny stuff that's like actually kind of being memeing things that people were too scared to say into like reality, like into sincere expressions, if that makes sense. Like something that's supposed to be a joke, but actually people believe it. But because we're so irony poisoned, the only way you can say it is by saying it as a joke at first.
I
Um,
guess it's kind of like a shoot the moon type deal.
yeah, it's kind of a situation where like, okay, we all know this is true, and we all know that like if you say it like, but you hit it straight on the nose, then it'll be too much for people. But if we joke about it enough for long enough, kind of the irony like fades away after you just say the true thing often enough, and then it's just true.
Yeah,
And I
it's tough because that doesn't really. I mean, the left memed itself into not understanding what a woman was like this last year. Like
yeah,
it
I think
hard did that, and so
yeah.
this just goes in any direction, right?
I think there is some value in this though. Like I genuinely do. Like I think this is a real thing. But I don't know if it's a total strategy. But so I'm just saying I do think there's some value in this particular approach. But you have to be very. It's not a holistic victory.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
like the right wing is correct in that memes that have sort of a guttural instinctive dimension to them tend to be right wing memes, and
right.
the left wing really they only have two sort of guttural emotions they appeal to. One is empathy. By far, that's not what most people feel. And the other one's narcissism and the feeling like you're on the right side and you're winning, which is, I would say, like that's sort of 99% of most left wing memes. It's sort of a smug narcissism. And so for that regard, I think that there's an element of meme magic that works better from the right because it gets us back to sort of our animal instincts. It allows us to think and experience politics frenetically at a very, very basic level. And that can't help but be good. But the problem is that this 2016 to 2017 really kind of scarred me, or 2018 in particular. I'm just I remember blood sports, and I remember how toxic that was. I don't doubt it red pilled a lot of people, but the amount of insincerity and absolute, I mean, cruelty too that came out of it, it was really questionable what the product was.
Definitely. All right. So let's move on to Son of a Glitch here for $20. Thank you very much, sir. What conservatives got from Canadian trucker protests? Foundational organizational building blocks for a more moderate class. It's a good first step for a lot of people, and those steps that build to larger ones Yarvid wants. Is that true? Like I don't. I mean, that
Yeah.
might be. I don't
Okay,
really
like
know anything
simple
about.
question. Like, so
Yeah,
my wife has a Canadian account. How can we transfer money to this foundational organization without getting monitored by the Canadian government?
yeah,
Can Son of a Glitch tell me that? Because, like, we're transferring money back and forth between Canada and America, and we get monitored. And as far as they know, we're just private citizens. So this is the thing, Son of a Glitch. I don't know what foundations we've built, and I know which ones we've lost. We've lost the ability to transfer money to independent political organizations without getting monitored and potentially having the accounts locked down. And, like, if you're a private citizen and one of your bank accounts gets frozen for 2 weeks and like the food prices go up, like that's not something a lot of people can take, right?
yeah. I mean, like I said, I just don't know anything about the Canadian political situation outside of what I've kind of seen at a distance. So maybe these things do exist, but I am very unaware of them, and you're much closer to them. So I would like this to be true, but I'm not sure if it
Sure.
is.
Like, it is the money question. That's the primary one, right? That's how they got the Canadian truckers,
Mhm.
and that's the power that they've reserved for themselves even after this ended. So whatever foundational organization building blocks you have built in the wake of this trucker protest, and like I wasn't there, right? Like I'm not close to the trucker protest. I was nowhere near Ottawa when this was going on. Absolutely. And I wasn't even in the same country. But I'm aware of the financial barriers they've put in place to guard themselves against this. So whatever foundational building blocks you have, like it's a zero-sum game. It's got to be bigger than the one they built to counteract you on that, right?
Let's see. Next one here, Life of Brian, $4.99. If the parents' movement translates into widespread voucher student funding versus system funding homeschooling, it's a huge win, low-hanging fruit. So the first part is right. The second part is not, right? Like it would be a huge win. You're right. Like that would be a big thing. That would be a big deal if it yielded that. But I don't think that that's low-hanging fruit. I think that that's like massive, right? Like it's the teachers union is a huge democratic constituent. It's a massive source of power and control on all kinds of levels for the Democrats, and the left in general, and I don't think that they're turning that over without a fight at all. I think there's a reason that they're going hard in the paint on DeSantis for this kind of thing, and there's a reason that they're fighting kind of that ability for vouchers. I mean, how long have we been talking about vouchers and like funding the student system? Like literally my entire life. I'm not a young man, and I remember this discussion from when I was 10.
Yeah, I
So
remember that in the 90s in California.
right. So like it's not low hanging of fruit at all. It's like massively difficult fruit, and the left is very aware of that. And I think they'll outlaw homeschooling before they turn
But
the funding over to the from
it,
the system to the student.
it's not low hanging, but it does seem achievable. Of all the things that have been floated, does seem like a way you could grab some money from the system, right?
Yeah, no, I'm to be clear, I'm on board with it. Like I'm not against this fight at all. I'm simply saying they know the power of this. I think that it is lower hanging fruit in the sense that the school system is maybe weaker than it's been in a long time after COVID, after the number of people looking at homeschooling and other things, the number of people who kind of had the reality of education kind of thrust in front of them during that whole thing. So I think in that sense, it may be that it's kind of like the media in that this is kind of a weaker edifice, and there might be more victories to gain there because it's just falling apart in certain areas naturally. I'm just saying I'm just saying they're not going to let that one go easily. Like they know what they've got there. They know its value.
But unlike affirmative action, middle class parents will know when it's working because they'll have the money in hand, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So if you actually pass something, unlike CRT where it's like the honor principle, like please don't teach critical race theory, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Pinky swear, please. The voucher system, what I like about that is, and I don't like the word voucher because it should basically just be like student focused funding would be what I would call it, or student centered funding. But the good thing about that is that it just instantly puts money in the hands of the middle class.
Yep, absolutely. Let's see. Belphosphorus Night for $2. Simple, really. Find invaders like Californians. I mean, don't get me wrong. Invading Californians are a scourge upon the red states. So I understand, but I'm not sure if we're going to be able to stop the influx.
Well, I'm a California invader. Right?
I know. I took that shot on purpose.
But what does he mean by find invaders like California? Like get rid of them? Like
I'm assuming border control begins at the California border. To be clear.
Well, yeah. I mean the real problem though is immigration. We just have to lower the immigration rate because this is. Basically, these blue states act like ideological laundering centers. They take in new immigrants and then they spew out middle class people that have been indoctrinated to believe in leftist ideas.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's see. Hunter counts for $5. Breaking news: Twitter is now re-examining Elon Musk's bid. If that's been happening while we're on stream, that's definitely a very interesting development. I don't know what would lead them to do that, but I would definitely be. I don't know. It's a mixed win if that happens. I think Dave already explained the disruptive nature of it and why it's kind of good in general. But let's not forget that just this, a couple days ago, Musk came back out and said, "I've got to get rid of all. I need to verify everybody and get rid of all anons on Twitter." So. Yeah.
Yeah, but even if he did that, it would still be massively disruptive.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't get me wrong.
And in the
But
event that Elon Musk does take over Twitter, I expect all my followers to drive across the town and blast Leonard Skinner's Freebird.
that's right.
That's the only song to listen to.
Absolutely. All right, let's see. Life of Brian, again, thank you, sir. Klaus's endgame is humans as cattle, period. The Kenosha left is already there and will continue to follow whatever Klaus's minions say. I don't know
What
if
does
it's
he mean
quite
the
as
Kenosha
simple as
left?
you. I'm sorry?
What is the Kenosha left?
I think kind of the woke left, I think, is kind of what he's talking
Ah,
about there. The culture war left. Um, but I think Dave's distinction there is valuable. I don't think they're exactly the same thing. I think their interests dovetail in many ways, and they've been able to ride together for a certain amount of time. But I think there is a real conflict there.
the question is, is Klaus Schwab the prophet of a new age? Is he a mastermind, or is he a delusional boomer? And I tend to go for the latter. But maybe he'll pull it off. There's obviously, you can't preclude that from happening. And like I said, political battles in the modern era, they just feel like just too. It's like this whole Russia versus Ukraine thing. It's just these two forces that are just incredibly weak battling it out, and it seems like a contest at who is weaker in real life than the other person, and you're constantly surprised by new depths of weakness that each side demonstrates in this battle. And the same thing is true with this Klaus Schwab bid for power. I think there's a few more places they could agree on. Like they could agree on like veganism is another one I hear in left circles a lot. Like they're talking about veganism a lot, which is perfect because that's just what the Klaus Schwabians want, right? That's the next conversation they want, is alternative food sources. So if they dovetail that way with the left, they'll try to push on that one.
Is it just me, or does that stuff feel like weak tea though? Like it's the same thing with environmentalism. Like the vegan question and the environmental one always felt the same to me. Like they just didn't have the political dynamism to get things moving. Like environmentalism exists as kind of this window dressing, and there are true believers out there, but I don't think it activates the passion or the drive the way of the rest. So it's like a convenient way for them to benefit their friends and punish their enemies, but it never seems to quite have the passion behind it that some of these other issues do. Or maybe I'm wrong about that, but
Veganism is going to be a really weak tea. No one in the
yeah.
Progressive Coalition is excited about it, and the foodies from Berkeley aren't going to be excited to chop down an artificial meat, not after they've come from consuming raw beef products as part of the whole Michael Pollan omnivore's dilemma thing in the 2000s. They'll notice the decrease in quality of life. Plus, they're Brahmins, and one of the classic ways Brahmins distinguish themselves is by eating better food. The second they eat lower quality food is the second that they start looking a lot less like a ruling caste, and they start looking a lot more like fools. So I don't think this is going to take off. Environmentalism had the advantage of the reason why global warming is popular among the left and useful is that it's an eschatology. If global warming wasn't there, then the right would own the future, because the right has a number of concerns, very legitimate concerns, that are 20 years away, 15 years away from happening. But the left doesn't worry about these concerns because they just wave their hands. Well, we'll all be under 30 feet of water because of global warming. And they've been saying this for 50 years, and it works very, very well. As people know, I have a nuanced opinion about the whole climate change thing. It's not black and white, but it's very easy to see what excites people about climate change is the eschatological dimension to it, the fact that it makes imperative politics in the moment, and the fact that it can be used to veto long-term concerns of things like posterity. No one worries about not having great grandchildren when your children are going to be flooded, right?
Yeah. All right, the next one here, DOH 917. I like Dave, but the fact there's not a lot of people adopting something is the same cope mistake. The entire elite apparatus is united. I don't think Dave was saying that the elites are like on their way to converting tomorrow, but I'll let him answer for himself there.
I don't think that the elite apparatus is united. The disturbing thing, I mean, that there are a lot of people of the Xers and the Boomers who don't like where things are going, but they don't have an alternative. There are a lot of millennials who don't like the way things are going, but they don't feel like they have an alternative. The disturbing thing, I suppose, is that the left has been able to capture politics as an entertainment product. And I guess maybe someone can prove me wrong, but I just don't know how the right wins politics as an entertainment product. Maybe meme magic is the solution to that. But that strikes me as that's sort of one thing going for us in the light of pretty much every other entertainment politics going against the right. And so what you have is new Zoomer generations and new millennial generations or younger millennial generations being way more leftist than they have a right to be, considering how much the left has failed them personally and how few of the left's promises are manifest. That's a problem. The elite apparatus is not united. And the problem also is that we keep on going back to this numbers game. It's not really a numbers game because the elite has an elite too. If you go to these PMCs, they all look to a few people. And if those few people aren't true believers, that whole thing starts getting really, really hollow really quickly. A few distinct believers that feel what they're doing is correct and that are going to do it regardless of what happens, that can be very, very powerful. And so I would say that the elite apparatus is actually kind of crumbling. The problem, and I know I said this, I feel like a broken record. The problem is imagination. Nobody can imagine a permanent, non-progressive victory that elites could reasonably join with hope for the future. And that lack of an imaginative alternative is what's creating the impression that the elite apparatus is united.
So Avalach here says Yarvin's apathy is repugnant. I mean, I don't think it's apathy so much as his understanding of what victory would look like. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've always had a problem with Yarvin's approach of like just act like a expat in your own country. I think that's a bit of a problem. I don't like the way that's phrased.
Yeah, it's impossible. Like if you try, I've tried it. It's impossible.
Yeah, it should be. I think it's kind of hard to, if you have any real care about your culture, your people, and your home.
But also expats in reality, if you've ever been an expat, what makes you emotionally divested is you're always one plane ticket away from not being there. Nobody in the modern West is one ticket away from escaping from the situation they live in. Mm-hmm. Period. So it's impossible to emotionally disengage. I think that Yarvin is really more cynical than apathetic, though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and he's he's kind of a materialist atheist in many ways. I think he understands the value of those things, but it's hard to truly root them, and so that's a problem as well. But Pete Budapest, again, thank you again, sir. Love you guys. Here's a practical question. What's the value of taking on debt at this current time in this environment?
Are you a bank?
Right. Yeah.
Because I mean, like, if you're a bank, like, load it on. Like, there's no cost because it's 0% interest rates for you. But if you are a not bank, you may have noticed that your credit card companies aren't really easing off the interest rates very much. Has that been what you've noticed too? That's been what I've noticed, because they know that if they ease off the interest rates, everyone's going to borrow up the wazoo at 8% inflation.
Yeah, I think if you were going to pile on debt to acquire assets to like hedge this thing, the time to do that was like 2 years ago, minimum.
I mean, how would you get the question is like, I just don't know. The question, this is what frustrates me so much about leftist economics. Like, to me, it's just so obvious that low interest rates is just giving money to rich people. And yet centrists and progressives seem to think that low interest rates take money away from rich people. This is such a fundamental disconnect, because to me, it's so obvious that if you're rich or you're a bank, you can borrow at practically 0% interest rates, invest in the economy, buy assets, and then you'll just make money because inflation, period. You're not even going to produce value. You're going to produce negative value, but you'll still make money because the interest rates is lower than inflation is. And so this is yeah, I'm so frustrated with this. If you have access to a very low interest rate loan that's lower than inflation is, that's lower than 5%, and you're going to get a cost of living adjustment, and you can reasonably buy an asset that's not going to depreciate, then if those three things are true, then it's free money, and you should absolutely do it. But those three things have got to be true. And for most people who aren't rich or aren't banks themselves, the big problem is the interest rates. Well, I guess the other big problem is, are you going to get a cost of living adjustment on your salary to make yourself whole? And that's the big barrier, in my opinion.
Yeah, again, a year or two ago, you might have been able to sneak in and get those interest rates that would have made that a positive transaction, but I think that window is already closed for most people, like Dave was saying. Son of a glitch here again. Thank you for your donation. He says, Dave, to answer your question, most dissident networks on a personal level than ever before in Canadian trucking protests. This development is what scared most left-wing organizers the most. Large systems were suppressed, but not small ones.
That's a good thing. This is sort of what I'm hoping, and this is what I'm hoping that. So you know how that. What was so strange is that during the lockdown, we didn't experience inflation, but it seemed that the second we came out of lockdown, we did experience inflation. And this is, I'm not going to say I predicted but this was my instinct. I think I mentioned this on the live stream, is that the consequences of these bad decisions happen with sort of a phase differential. They happen with an offset. And they usually happen when the thing stops. And so the question is that, are we all going to wake up from the lockdown, go back to our lives as normal, and then sort of collectively red pill? This is actually not, this is actually a sincere question, because I felt multiple times walking into a room full of progressives that I could just stand up on a chair and go, okay, guys, you've all seen the last 2 years. This situation is just effed, isn't it? And them all clapping in agreement or something like that. I feel like maybe what's happening is some of these counterbalancing measures are being built on a very, very small and implicit scale, such that they'll all snap back when we go back to normal and the laws of gravity will apply. The problem, son of a glitch, for what you're saying is that unless the rules of political gravity come back in, as the rules of economics apparently have in the last 6 months, how do you use these small organizations, these small personal organizations? Certainly you could use them in the 90s and the 2000s, but small local organizations haven't been immediately useful in this strange world we're in right now.
Absolutely. All right. So our next one here, one's compliment for $5 Canadian. Thank you. How hot take, even if Musk takes Twitter, Google or Facebook will just spin off an alternative and left will readily migrate. They hold the torch. I've heard this before, and this one I actually disagree with. I think that if you do this, you just kill the Twitter model. I think once you break that marketplace, once you kind of break that that public square, then I don't think it reconstitutes the same way somewhere else. You'll get a different social media platform for like journalists to land on and stuff, I guess. But I think that a lot of the magic of Twitter is kind of lost if they do this. I'm not saying that they won't do what you're saying. I'm just saying that it won't be as simple like everybody just migrates there and that becomes new Twitter. I'm not sure that's how that works.
There'll be a lot of moving expenses. People will get lost. And the other problem is that the infrastructure, the social media infrastructure of most important people will be spread across more platforms. So there'll be more demand for things like unifying the platforms or coming up with an open protocol. And so, the power of the monopoly came from Twitter being first and foremost. And once that's divided, it becomes a lot less powerful.
Let's see. Ludic Path for 50 something. I'm not sure what that denomination is, but thank you very much.
Is it North Korean?
It could be. It could be. We could be getting our commie bucks. Lefties be like, teaching children about hell and Revelation is a child abuse, then proceed to go full Thunberg on them. Yeah, I mean, obviously, like that's any attempt to get them to return to some kind of neutral education, which never existed, is certainly not going to happen. Like they're going to be teaching their eschatology either way. Like that's the goal. So
yeah, but this is sort of something that I just can't get over this division we've come to where half of America, both halves of America basically accuse the other half of child abuse.
Yeah.
Like really, I mean, this is not sustainable.
No, and not nothing good comes of this.
I just don't know how anyone can be a centrist anymore. I'm sorry, I don't want to bring my own other online conflicts into
no,
this,
we were going to get to this anyway. So
but like, I just don't know how anybody can see this and go like, oh, hey guys, we're just another presidential election from people regaining their sanity. Like, someone has to lose this fight, and if we determine as a society that transitioning children is bad, then that's going to take down a huge amount of our institutional apparatus that we've built the entire post-war world on, because they've all bought into this 100%.
Yeah, well, I think this explains maybe our next one here. Charismal. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. For $5, explain why LGBT politicization is bad. Like I'm a normie.
Yeah, so heterosexuality is a curse, cancer. The concept should not exist. I'm not a heterosexual. You can clip that one. That's not to say that I'm gay. I'm saying that the concept of identifying yourself as a sexuality is absolute bullshit. Even though I do a heterosexuality by being a married Christian, I am not a heterosexual. The real trick of the LGBT movement was, I guess it was sort of a two-part trick. The first one was to take an action, and this is sort of a 19th century move they made, was they took, the 19th century they were all about taxonomy, very much like zoology. And so if you did something, you were a this kind of thing. And so we went from a sin-based model to a taxonomic model for sexuality. So people didn't commit sodomy, they were homosexuals in the 19th century conception. And this became an element of sort of expansive liberalism in the early 20th century. And then post the 1960s, it became an element of identity politics. The problem is that once we take sexuality and we move it from an action that's sinful or not to an identity, and then to an expansive civil right, we've taken something that has to be moral and we moved it into a position where it has to be demoralized, or it has to be super moral. So to say that gay people have rights or straight people have rights as straights or gays is to say that we cannot make judgments about their sexual actions. That's the logical conclusion. One statement is exactly identical to the other. It's like saying, well, do adulterers have rights? Well, yeah, they do, but not as adulterers, because adultery is not licit. And does that mean that I'm going to illegalize adultery? That's a prudent law? Well, no, not necessarily. I don't think that illegalizing adultery is prudent law. But talking about adulterer rights is an insane way to approach the question of whether how we should encourage or discourage marital fidelity inside a society. But every time we talk about a sexual identity as an identity and as a coalition inside a political party, we've crossed that line. And it's even gotten worse. It's even gotten to a new level where now they're not only identity politics groups and petitioners. Now LGBTQ has become its own religion, since all other religions are banned and sexuality is considered the last thing that's sacred. People are literally treating LGBTQ as a religious conversion of sorts. I mean, you can see this from like the libs of TikTok accounts. These people are religious fanatics for LGBTQ. How did a sexual act become a religious sacrament? Well, you've seen the transition, and the transition goes through this lens of identity and this lens of liberal rights, and that's what's really wrong about it. I'm sorry, was that too wordy?
No, I think that's right, and I think there's a reason that so many of these people who, like you said, show up on libs of TikTok emphasize how important it is to do this behind the back of parents or without the knowledge of parents or over the protest of parents. I think that's a key element to understand.
They see themselves
well.
like persecuted Christians spreading
Exactly.
their religion among the masses, right?
Exactly.
And I mean, it would behoove us to go after these people. I mean, this is sort of a language transition. I sincerely believe that if we were to categorize LGBTQ as a religion and not as a identity group, it would solve most of our problems. If we were to put this in religious language, it's really clear what we want with the Don't Say Gay bill. We just don't want you proselytizing our children into your religion under the cloak of public school, because you were able to get this religion through the anti-religious safety system we installed with the supposed separation of church and state. That's what people mean. But because of this confusing language around sexuality and rights and our limited definition of religiosity, we can't say this. Someone from the chat saying, he's tagging me as saying it's not LGBTQ as a religion, it's just Slanesh worship. Well, it's not a religion, it's just blank worship. I don't know how to process that statement. That just sounds
I think
like
he's just making a 40K joke.
Okay.
At the end there, he says, "Get with Morgoth on the 40K lore train."
Yeah, this is what's actually sort of funny about 40K is like you think that this whole like worshiping demon stuff is like ridiculous and
it's not at all.
Metal. Yeah, it's just like it's funny because like it's chaos is actually almost nothing. It's just sort of this Hobbesian omnis bellum bellum omnis contra omnis. But it's like a virus, right? Like a virus is just a stray piece of DNA and like a protein shell. But when the virus enters a body, it behaves as if it were a living being. And when chaos enters a political system, it behaves as if it were a religion, like it had sentience, right? And maybe like we're both Christian, and so in some sense we believe that the primordial chaos was granted sentience by the fall, in a sense. So maybe it does. But even if I think even secularists like Sargon, like you or Morgoth, right? Like it's beyond dispute that even if this is just an emergent property, it looks like it behaves as if it has sentience. It behaves as if it's a religion when it's put in this context of a political system.
All right, guys. I think we've worked our way through all the super chats. Did you want to get into the centrist thing? I don't know how much time you have.
I'll give myself to I was thinking 10 more minutes, but because we're almost at the double hour mark.
Yeah,
right?
we're approaching the 2-hour mark.
Yeah, I mean, I usually go plan for 2 hours, but okay. I mean, I guess the centrist thing is just I just don't know how these I can't get into the mind of a centrist because they're the one people I don't understand. Like I understand progressives way more than I understand centrists at this stage, because I feel like they're just I guess centrism is ideal if you're going to do politics and market it as an entertainment product.
Yeah.
But like what haven't you taken on board for the world we live in right now is my question. I don't understand how you see what what we've seen now and think that there's going to be a course correction to get us back to sanity that's not some kind of radical redesign of our system and our assumptions.
Yeah, I had someone make a comment before the stream started, something to the effect of, interesting that, we both went on shows that were supposedly centrist. You went on Adam and Stitches, and I was on Timcast, but we had very different kind of responses, and they were wondering why. And I think the answer is really simple. The Timcast people aren't centrists anymore. Like that was their
Yeah.
position a few years ago. But even if they don't label themselves right wing, everyone outside of them knows they're right wing. Like they know it when they see it, even if they wouldn't call themselves that at this point. And I think many of them would anyway. So I think they're fundamentally different shows, even though technically they would be billed as like centrist shows.
Plus, I went on as a hostile entity.
That's very true.
Yeah. The thing is that I don't exactly know much about Tim Pool, but if you're standing static, you're going to be eventually on the right wing, and Tim Pool is very much in that position. And there's something about Tim Pool, and this I think is why people like him, that's sort of very, very basic and sincere and straightforward. It can come off as boneheaded sometimes, but there's just not this layer of slipperiness that you get with the Adam and Sitch crowd. The Adam and Sitch crowd, the problem is it's just very hard to figure out what they actually believe. Just like I fed them this summary that eventually involved me getting blocked from them. And I said to them, just to tell me yes or no whether you believe in this. Adam and Sitch, is your position that affirmative action, disparate impact, and protected classes, and this extended regime of post 1970s rights is bad, and we need to get rid of it, and we need to simultaneously de-wokeify the universities, and we can accomplish this through a small or small-ish, I left that door open, political change. And they refused to answer this question. I couldn't make it more straightforward. It's 4 actual policies, whether you want to remove them or not, and whether you think you can do this through a moderate change to our political system. And I think that if they say that, I think that that's going to expose that what they are trying to do is that they're demanding a radical change with a moderate motion. It's sort of like, I'm sorry, I'm rambling here, but it's sort of like pornography. Like, why do people consume? Like, there's sort of this, at least with male porn, I guess with female porn too. There's this narrative, and the narrative always is that you can get like this high value partner for like little or no effort. You can see this in like romance novels that women read too, like the billionaire, like playboy, perfect body who falls into the arms of like, this ordinary girl or whatever, right? And that's sort of this idea that you can get something for nothing is what sells in entertainment. Mm-hmm. And in some sense, I feel like centrism is political pornography. It's this idea that we're going to accomplish a radical change, we're going to win, and we're going to do so with virtually no effort, just as the natural realignment process. It will just naturally happen. I guess it doesn't help that progressives have literally been living this pornographic world in the sense that they do just naturally get victories for just doing very, very little.
Yeah, no, that's very true. It's the simulation of interacting and making a difference in victory, but without any of the actual work or risk and that's involved, and therefore none of the actual reward. But it feels like it, which Avaloch kind of hits on here. It says Adam's Stitch went progressivism without the humiliation.
Well, yeah, that's a good way to do it, but this is one thing that, the thing that red pilled me, I mention this every now and again, but the thing that red pilled me, or that started the rightward journey in the real way, was this is just when I was starting to convert to Catholicism, or back, depending on how you count it, because I was technically baptized Catholic, right? But it was the HHS mandate for birth control, right? And what I realized at that stage, I voted for the Obama administration, and the Obama administration was saying, well, we're going to end the culture war by refocusing us on material goods. And I realized when they passed this HHS mandate without exception that what they were really doing was paying back their friends. And there was this huge subset of the Democratic Party that just liked the humiliation of conservatives and they thrived on it. And this was a key aspect to their own political experience in a way that there's really no equivalent on the right wing. And so I don't know. I don't think you're going to get progressivism without humiliation. It's part of the product, right? It's part of what makes it fun for people.
So I think just a donation there. Thank you, Leo John Gunid. I guess I don't know what that denomination is, but thank you. Oh, and then there's a question. Let's see. Auron says Dave can't get over his Twitter addiction. Can you at least teach him how to tweet effectively? I don't think Dave's on Twitter, so I don't.
Well,
I
do have a fake account, and I was arguing with Adam and Sitch because of the fact that they don't respond except on Twitter. I had to go over there to talk to them. And I got into a little bit of an argument, and my wife was glaring at me because I'm not supposed to be on Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah, no more. I don't need to learn how
done.
to tweet effectively.
I was gonna say, yeah, I was pretty sure you were off there.
Now that I couldn't learn from the master of the right wing tweet here, so
I mean, you got me started on there, man. I didn't. You were retweeting me when I had 100 followers, so that's I did not. I did not bootstrap myself. Make no mistake.
You have you mastered the succinctness, and I was always verbose. I still am verbose, and you have the ability to encapsulate. And you realize that the encapsulation and repetition of the small tweet is more important than, my thing was a tweet thread, which is just a monstrosity, and it was it's just never used Twitter that way.
Well, they're great. It's a bunch of different styles that do work on there. The tweet thread can be valuable, but it's very difficult to pull off, and it needs to be very. You kind of need an audience already for that to really take off most of the time, because it's more of a commitment, as where it's easier to grow immediately through smaller stuff because it's zero commitment. People don't understand that Twitter is like a visual medium. You're competing with a large amount of people's attention as they scroll through a large number of posts, and you need something that grabs them. And an essay can do that, if you have a very powerful one, but usually it's upon other people's recommendation already, or because you already have a large audience, and then it goes through the right avenues rather than grabbing random people who aren't invested in your post already.
But the tweet thread is kind of stupid. It's like a mini essay that's done.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely idiotic. I can't believe how many things of tweet threads I wrote. It's just it's such a waste of time.
You are certainly better served by long form content, and that's why we make very different videos and posts and it's essential. You got to have both of those for sure. Those are, I wish in many ways I could make the hour-long video that's really thought-provoking and puts together all the threads, but I make 10-minute videos for reason and tweets because that's where
I think that's actually really brilliant. I think you've really conquered Twitter. The problem is I almost think Twitter isn't worthy of you, because I really hate Twitter as a force in our society, and I think that Twitter does augment your natural charisms, as us Catholics say, your God-given talents of communicating these complicated ideas very, very succinctly. Oh man, I wish there was a better way we could highlight this. It wasn't the literal cancer that's eating our society apart,
Yeah, it's one of those things. Is oh, what are you really good at? It turns out I'm really good at the thing that's destroying us all. But I guess that's the former journalist thing, right? It's if you're gonna have the evil power, I guess turn it to the side of good. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, I'm with you. If I could have chosen a different format in which to succeed, I would have. But I'm not gonna sit around and pretend I'm disappointed with that working out. Okay, let's grab one more here before we get out, because we don't want to keep you here forever. Thank you guys for the super chats, absolutely. But I can't keep Dave forever here. He's been very generous with his time.
I can say 50 minutes extra. But I can't probably after 4. I have a hard stop at 4:30. So
I gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah,
so
no,
that just absolutely can't push 4:30 at all. So at
100%.
least like 4:15, 4:20 would be ideal.
I have a really hard time just doing streams over 2 hours in general. Like I just, my brain gets exhausted, and I got life and things to do.
Yeah.
So I don't understand how people do 5 hour streams.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean,
I
it's
think
a
I might have
talent.
done one 5-hour stream, but that was when I was like at the start of my channel when I was a lot younger.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, if you're video gaming, I mean, if you've seen how like Hassan and all these people do streams, it's just very, very low effort. It's just them playing video games. It's not like us where we're talking and processing ideas.
Yeah,
They're just there.
that's a celebrity. That when you're just making money off of being around, I think that's more what that is than addressing ideas. But
But I
we
don't
don't.
think that people could do a stream like we're doing now for 6 hours. Our voices would fail, right?
Yeah, or my brain would fail. One of those two. Can you bet on elite hypocrisy? Oh, thank you. Selfish neuron. Sorry, didn't read out your name. Thank you very much for your donation. Can we bet on elite hypocrisy? All we want will be available, and our behavior in our community will not be politically punished. Only media harassment. Can we have parallel economy and community?
Wait, hold on.
Yeah, I'm parsing those multiple questions.
Okay, so first on hypocrisy, I never got this because whenever you say the left are hypocrites, there's this little modification that makes it so much more powerful. The left are hypocrites about X should always be replaced with the left doesn't really believe in X. I don't know, but this tiny modification is so much more powerful. The first one is trying to hold them accountable to their own ideology from outside with hypocrisy. The second one is just claiming that their entire product is bullshit. And it's such a tiny modification. I don't know why more people don't do it. So I wanted to say that just straight up, I guess.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm trying to think about the other ones here. I'll do the last one here first. Can we have parallel economy and community? I mean, that's the big question, right? I would love for that answer to be yes. I think there are some people like Gab who are doing their best. I don't know if that's a battle they can win, but I mean, it's God's work. Like, but more power to them. I wish them nothing but success. But I feel like as soon as you finally achieve that, the powers that be are just going to destroy that in every way possible. They don't care what kind of thing they need to violate to make that happen.
Well, there's no way that the left is going to leave the right alone. That's not what they do.
Right.
The right's going to need to find some way to kind of sting them a little bit to get them to go away. I don't know how exactly that's going to work, but
yeah, this has always been the problem, is that the right is just like, we'll flee to something else, we'll make our own thing, we'll make our own place, and it'll be fine. And that has a 100% failure record, I think.
Yeah,
at this point. And so at some point we just have to face the fact that that's not going to work. It's the impulse. It's the understandable impulse. Why have that very costly conflict of values when you can just go make your own community? But with the little comic where, you don't belong here, and then they go off and make their own little thing, and then all the people who told them they don't belong there show up in their tiny little square and tell them they don't belong there again, is I think correct.
Yeah, I mean, there could be a dimension where this is true if the leftist has this metastasizing catastrophe where, in particular, I'm thinking of the foreign policy dimension sort of flies out of focus. If they start losing their international allies and they start getting internal challenges inside blue states, like if there's a genuinely third world nationalist movement inside California that was sort of not right wing, and was the left lost control over their client populations, or they lost control of client states inside of Europe, either to the left or to the right, then that situation would create space where you might be able to get away from them because they would just have their hands too full with everything else going on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But not, I mean, the left is hyper focused on the right. They will always prioritize that target.
Yeah, okay. Now I understand the middle of that question better. Okay, so like basically, could we get to a situation where they would care less about policing the actual behavior inside the communities, but will only be harassed by the media? Okay, that's what, by having those parallel economies in communities. I see what he's saying now. Okay.
I mean, yeah, maybe that would be sort of a symbiotic relationship. Like they could use this as a whipping boy, and
Right. Yeah.
like,
Just to keep their people sated.
but the problem is that that only works for like 10 years because they teach all the new up and coming elites that this is the cancer, and then they realize that there is a symbiotic relation and you need to have these people around, but the new generation doesn't understand that, right?
Right.
So they come in and then they just decide to wipe out the malfeasant element, right? So this is a lot of problem with the boomer leftists is they say things ironically, and I think that they're only ironic, but the younger generation actually believes them.
Yes.
Like my own mother, uh, she goes along with all this equality talk, and I asked her, "Do you actually believe this, that we're going to have this type of equality?" And she's like, "Oh no, this isn't what people want to hear. This just to be nice. That everyone knows that this isn't going to happen." And the same thing with this whole transgenderism thing. Like we can call them women. That's just to be nice. No one actually believes this, and I can't impress on her that no, people actually believe this.
Yeah.
No, there's two sort of like purely hypothetical like ways to dissipate the culture war that will never happen, but are fun to keep in mind. The first one is this, like, they let us have our own country and they just like badmouth us and we give them money or something like that, like this person was suggesting. The other one was that we let them win and then they do reactionary policies under the guise of the revolution, like Napoleon, who essentially ruled like Louis XIV under the guise of being revolutionary. Those things are fun little toys, but they'll never happen, right?
So our next one here, Pete Budapest again, thank you very much. The center shtick is a rhetorical trick. It really means anything right or center is a non-starter, and we get to engage in nihilistic banter, pretending to be above it all, Stu and Colbert in the 2000s. And I think that's largely accurate.
I love the fact that Stephen Colbert hid the fact that he was an asshole for like 15 years by pretending to be Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah.
I think the guy's just genuinely an asshole. And I mean, he played an asshole in Strangers with Candy, and he played an asshole on the Colbert Report. And then we realized that no, he is the kind of person that makes fun of poor people for not being able to afford a Tesla. That's the kind of guy he actually is.
Yeah, and he didn't seem to understand that once the mask was off and like he wasn't playing the character anymore, that like he actually needed to shift that. Like he just kept doing it without any self-awareness.
I'm being an asshole. It's cute and funny, right? No, Stephen, like now we just think you're an asshole.
Yeah, the only reason this worked is that you were supposed to be mocking someone else, and it's actually just you, and that doesn't know.
I mean, this just gets us back to the politics as entertainment product type deal. Is that this is, politics just doesn't work as comedy, in my opinion. And I don't know. The problem is I kind of understand Adam and Sitch's thing. Like I am kind of being an asshole to them because I'm coming right up to them and I'm saying like, hey guys, you have to show us exactly how the magic trick is done. You have to explain why, you're professional wrestlers, and you have to explain that when you did that pile driver, it wasn't actually real. It was designed so that it wouldn't hurt the other guy.
Yeah.
I'm exposing their kayfabe, but the problem is that people actually believe this stuff. They actually believe that what they're watching on something like Adam and Sitch or Jon Stewart is like real politics. That these people believe what they're saying.
I run into this problem with the post-leftist too when I'm having this conversation. I now that you describe that phenomenon, I recognize it quite clearly. It's like, okay, guys, well, let's just go ahead and take these things to your kind of logical conclusion. Then why don't you just explain how this works? And it's like, well, obviously we can't explain that. Like that's a serious problem. Like because then the game's over.
Yeah, well, with what is maybe I'm missing what they're is it the fact that their premises all contradict fundamental leftist premises, like, or
They don't, if they agree as to why, if they agree to as to why their objections, where their actual fundamental problems are with the left, if they really drill down into like the reasons those things don't work, other than like, I just don't like these things because they're not 1990s liberalism, like if they actually get down into
yeah,
those conversations, then they have to start acknowledging principles that are like really uncomfortable, and like truths that are that kind of completely turn, like every time I have this conversation with post liberals, it's like, you guys understand you're just going through the libertarian phase, right? Like
yeah.
you're just parroting the libertarian step between leftism and conservatism. You're just neocons. And they're like, what do you mean we're just neocons? We don't believe in any of this stuff. Like, okay, well then why are you against this left-wing thing? Why are you against that left-wing thing? And it's all just like, well, I think we should just be left alone at the end of the day. I think we should just, it's
Yeah.
like, so you're just going through that step.
Well, there's just so many different varieties of this. There's sort of the ridiculous boomer variety that you see in Andrew Sullivan,
Yeah.
which I can't process this anymore. I don't understand. Like, I kind of would, I'd like to be a fly on the wall in his brain, because it must be a wild place, because like nothing there makes sense. How could he not see this? He's been involved in, like, directly involved in so many stages of he invented the word Christianist for people who pushed back on this stuff 20 years ago, and now he's in the exact same place.
Yeah, at this point, I can't. I have to admit to Schadenfreude with Andrew Sullivan. It's just watching the ride. Like, but yeah.
Then you get to like the more understandable people like Richard Hanania, and that's sort of like, I think that's sort of the horizon. Once you get past Richard Hanania, you kind of, I feel like you're more realistic. Richard Hanania, I think he does still believe we can resurrect this secular society to some degree, and he harbors all of these ideas about how this is fixable, or this was a good initial idea, and to me it doesn't make any sense with the stuff that he complains about on a very regular basis.
Yeah, particularly because he's been like making like some Steve Saylor-ish statements and noises, and it's like, dude, they're never gonna forgive you. Like, you're never gonna walk that back, buddy.
You're never going to walk that. I mean, this is the problem, is that, I mean, once you acknowledge that, well, I can't talk about this thing directly, right? But
sure,
like,
yeah.
there are a number of basically plausible scientific results that the cathedral has canceled Nobel-winning scientists for discussing.
Yeah, you're not going to survive this.
Yeah, but the thing is this, like, once you acknowledge that the cathedral has been, that the mainstream apparatus of perceived science is highly deviated from truth in virtually all areas where it intersects with politics, and that they've been destroying renowned scientists for dissenting thoughts, how does the rationalist recover from that? Because it's like, okay, like, now all science has to be kind of reevaluated, like, not the results of the science, not the data, but like, only the data and the direct observations count. Like, the frame has to be thrown out, because the second it has a political conclusion, I should immediately doubt it. Once they come and they tell you, like, have you seen this debate where they canceled Destiny? Or, like, I'm sorry, I'm digressing, but like,
no, I haven't.
This is amazing. Like, it's an amazing cultural artifact, because so he's debating that trans women, like women with biologically male bodies, and who are just been on HRT for like a very short amount of time, that they have an advantage over real women. Like, this is so obvious, like it couldn't possibly be argued any other way. Mm-hmm. And these people are like throwing studies in his face. Like, pure, like they're the ones who think peer review is on their side, right? The data is not, but the peer review, like, little abstract, like the PR statement of the science is.
And that's all they need.
Yeah, that's all they need in a debate context. And so the problem is, like, this just destroys rationalists where they stand, right? Like, I understand what they're thinking, but like, their entire system is just smashed at this stage.
Yeah, you think they would understand how hot the water is, but yeah, they always seem to think that if they can just stand on that, they'll turn the tide. And you think that the examples at this point would be clear, but I don't know.
Or
All
we
right,
got a few
so
more super chats here.
yep. Rashad, thank you again, sir. Shouldn't the distant right take the Daily Wire media venture seriously, as at least some mainstream avenues to submit right wing art? So I don't know all the details of the Daily Wire's thing. I do know that they are providing alternative like children's programming and stuff. I don't. Are they like taking submissions? I'm not sure what that means in a way to mainstream it. I mean, something that is less woke for your kids to watch, I guess, is good. The problem is like if you look at what those people believe and kind of where they stand, it feels like it's just like, okay, so you're going to get 90s liberal programming for your kids, which is, I guess, strictly better than what you have now. But their underlying assumptions feel like they automatically take them to the wrong conclusions. And if you need any way to kind of understand that, just look at what Jeremy Boring's been doing on Twitter the last couple of days, right? Like he's learned nothing. Like his understanding of what he's up against has not changed. He's still kind of doing the like Reagan capitalism version of conservatism. So like, is the Reagan version, of conservatism better than what, the woke stuff that people are getting now? Sure, yeah, absolutely. But it's just a fire break. Like it's always going to end up where we're at now, I guess. But maybe, I mean, if people can get truly based stuff through to the Daily Wire to get them to publish it, then by all means. I mean, don't let me stop you at all. If that's something they're looking for, I wasn't aware of it.
Again, I think it's a stopgap, the Daily Wire. The problem is that like real art can't go through this kind of avenue. The Daily Wire is a conservative publication, which by definition makes it a corporation built on compromise. And real art doesn't emerge from compromise. It emerges from being itself and being unapologetic about what it is. And the second you try to feed it through a committee, you rob it of its main power. So if you have a kids program, something that's unobjectionable, by all means submit it to the Daily Wire and you'll sell it to Republicans. But when we talk about art, or at least when I talk about art, I don't want to sell art to Republicans. I want to sell art to people who currently are cathedral apparatchiks, people who are not who are inside the mainstream opinion, but are really not feeling it spiritually. And for that, you need something that looks a little bit more like the route that Bronze Age pervert took.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, let's see. Frederick.
Yeah, I lost one because I'm coming up on my hard stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll get these two from Frederick, guys, and then Dave's gonna bow out because he needs to go. Frederick, tired of the right collecting these '90s liberals and thinking that we've won. Yeah, no, that's a huge problem. That's an absolutely massive problem, and I've run into this now that I have like more direct conversations with like people in kind of mainstream conservative media. Like they really feel like this is the momentum swing. Like that's not I think that's a genuine understanding and read from them. It's like, now that we're picking up all these people falling off the left, we're gonna win. And
getting a Bill Maher at this stage is less like someone offering you a fresh stick of gum and more like them just taking out their old gum and giving it to you. The fact that they're giving it to you is almost more of a fuck you than it is any kind of genuine gift. It's just like, here, we're done with this thing. Take it, throw it away. It disgusts us. And, Bill Maher is not going to do anything. His audience is entirely boomers. And to the extent that it's a mindless new atheists who are going to hop on any bandwagon that keeps the consume train going.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's see. Where was your other one here? Frederick says the most reactionary take is correct on a long enough timeline. Certainly, more reactionary takes have been correct. I don't know if it's always the most, but it certainly it's a safer bet than anything else, I guess, at this point.
My favorite quote from the latest Yarvin, to quote the father of reaction, was that the truth always has a subtle flavor to it. Mm. This is why hyperbolic, this is why you know, if you weren't around in 2016, 2017, but there were just like all of these, you know, in right wing circles back then, there was an explosion of sort of like this alt right thing. And they would try to like argue you that like certain historical events that the mid-century Germans didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it was just, you know, it's this idea like, well, if one thing is wrong, then it's all wrong, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is like, you know, like, look, there's subtlety in history. Most things that are in history actually did happen. They could be exaggerated. They could be missing key context, but truth always has a very subtle flavor to it. So a lot of things that the progressives say is absolutely true. And, you know, they've taken on bad ideas, and that's why we're in the position we are.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. I want to say thank you to Easter Worshipper. If you guys want a personal thank you, you can go ahead and check out my Patreon. Easter Worshipper is one of the people who's donating over there, and I redid that, so there's like there's exclusive content for people at different levels and that kind of thing. So if you want to check out exclusive videos or any of that stuff, make sure to check out the Subscribe Star. To do that. All the other links are below. I've got Dave's links as well. I think you guys probably already subscribed to Dave, but just in case, make sure to check him out there. And Dave, just want to say thank you. I appreciate you battling through your cold for the stream.
Yeah, people might notice that. Well, I hope my voice is coming through the right volume, because I have a bit of a sore throat, so that's why I'm croaking out this this dialogue. But thanks for having me on, Auron. You should I should have you on my channel sometime. We could discuss the same issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds great. All right, guys.
Great.
Have a good one, and as always, I'll talk to you next time.